This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to cover this topic because it's very important. And while Americans are distracted with, of course, the most ridiculous issues you could possibly imagine, the world leaders are working together right out in the open on how they could ruin our lives. And that's obviously something that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis here in America. But one of the things that people don't think about is the destruction of the dollar. Why? Well, because they still could go out and make purchases and things like that. And 99% of people don't look at the receipt after they make purchases. They don't realize that the price of milk is practically $7 to $8 a gallon, depending on where you live. That eggs are about $7 for 12 eggs, a dozen eggs. I mean, it's insanity, but it's a slow bleed. It's a slow bleed out of everybody's pockets because the whole goal here is to kill off the middle class, to make everybody and put everybody into a giant basket known as poverty, right? A poverty basket. And they're doing it in many, many different ways. So all of these other world leaders, while our government continues to talk about the most ridiculous issues, are meeting together at a meeting called BRICS, or as I like to call it, PRICS, because that's pretty much what everybody there is. But BRICS is a meeting that takes place yearly and has for the last decade, that takes place in Johannesburg, South Africa. And here the countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are working together to discuss what they can do to continue the process and the momentum of destroying the dollar. You'd think our government, which is supposed to represent us, would be doing something about it or stopping it from happening. This isn't something that's happening in private, but our government just continues to act like complete morons on purpose, talk about things like guys having babies and all sorts of stuff, and we literally actually have people who debate this stuff while other countries are working on destroying the dollar. The de-dollarization is an irreversible process, according to Vladimir Putin, according to all these world leaders who are meeting. And I'm going to play you a clip because they're actually brought it up here in America on national news, which is shocking because they, want to bring it up on national news and they want you to realize, hey, all the problems that you're having, that you're not realizing, well, it's being done by design. All the world leaders are getting together because they want to destroy the dollar, because this new world order will not work with a dollar. And America has to be brought to its knees, and that's what they're doing. People don't realize that they're paying more money for less food. You're getting less food if you actually look at the measurements on a lot of processed food that people buy that are in boxes. You're getting less than you used to get in the boxes because they've lowered the amount in the boxes and they've increased the price. So it's a slow bleed that's really working because a lot of people are noticing that they're not able to save any money, and everything that they make on a monthly basis is going right back into food, to taxes, all this other stuff that they're doing to obviously make us go broke. So Vladimir Putin's openly talking about how they're gaining momentum in destroying the dollar, that de-dollarization is now an irreversible process. And our government would agree, because guess what? Our government is working with these people. What do you think? China's meeting there. Everyone thinks that our government isn't working with Russia. I know that people have a tough time swallowing that pill, but they are working together. All of these people have connections to the World Economic Forum, including Putin. And what country is the biggest threat to them? What country is the most armed? What country has the most money? America. What country is probably, even though our country is completely dumbed down at this point, what country is the most likely to fight against this? Would be America, because the way of life that we have here, most people are not going to put up with what they're trying to pull. And most people do understand the global order. And actually, on the news, on the mainstream media, listen to this clip. They actually discuss a United States-led global order. I love how this is now out in the open, and nobody has a problem with this. They're just like, oh, well, there's their global order, and there's the United States-led global order. This is a nationalist country. This country is supposed to take care of itself. But as we see in Maui, it does not. In fact, not only does our country not take care of itself, our government, I should say, is doing its part in destroying this country by literally burning people to death. But take a look at, what this BRICS/PRICS meeting is all about.
Набирает силу объективный, необратимый процесс дедоларизации наших хозяйственных связей. Предпринимаются усилия по отработке эффективных механизмов взаимных расчетов и валютно-финансового контроля.
The three-day BRICS summit is underway in Johannesburg. The event brings together leaders of emerging economies, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin will join via video conference. That's because of an international criminal court arrest warrant issued for him over the abduction of children from Ukraine. For more, we want to bring in Ryan Berg. He is the director of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. Explain to us why the summit is significant and why the U.S. and other Western nations should pay attention.
Well, thank you for having me on. I think this summit is particularly important for the BRICS because one of the major questions at play here is whether the organization will expand beyond its current 5 members. BRICS now have existed for a little more than a decade, and they've built up enough clout that it is an attractive organization now for other countries in the Global South to want to join. And so there are no fewer than several dozen applications now to join this BRICS organization, an organization that represents an emergence onto the global stage of several countries in the Global South and the power that the Global South feels it has to organize, in many cases, against the U.S.-led global order and the U.S.-led international system.
And how about Chinese leader Xi Jinping? He's at this year's summit, marking his second international trip since the pandemic. What is China hoping to accomplish while in South Africa?
Well, China is one of the biggest advocates for increasing the size of the BRICS. It sees the BRICS as yet another vehicle for its influence throughout the Global South, challenging the U.S.-led global order. And so for China, I think getting strict criteria, objective criteria on the table and agreed to by the 5 members of the BRICS countries on what expansion would entail would be a major win for Xi as the organization looks to increase its members. And just showing that BRICS has global clout is important for China.
The much-awaited BRICS summit has kicked off in Johannesburg. Leaders of member states, including Brazil, India and China, are in the South African city for the summit. Russia's Vladimir Putin is participating virtually. Speaking at the BRICS Business Forum meeting, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the grouping as a ray of hope during economic slowdown. He also floated the idea of BRICS countries joining India's Unified Payments Interface, or the UPI framework. The summit kicked off with the opening remarks from South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa says BRICS stands to strengthen economic ties and for inclusive economic development.
So that's what's going on. I mean, it would be amazing if 1,000 bricks fell from the sky during this meeting and just happened to land on everybody there. I'm just kidding, of course. We don't want that to happen, do we? No, we do actually. But anyway, let's get into some of the other topics that are being discussed there in addition to the destruction of the dollar, which again, we're seeing on a day-to-day basis here in America. I think one of the things that people need to see to make them realize the dollar is being destroyed is actually seeing the stock market crash. But they don't actually have to crash the market to destroy the dollar, to create poverty here. They could do it in many different ways. In fact, they could just cap it and make it go up to a point where nobody can realistically cash in their money and things like that. So there's lots of things they can do, but people obviously aren't paying attention to any of this stuff because they're just too busy infighting. And obviously the Democrats who are, people who identify as Democrats and vote and stuff, who are easily just whatever the government says they do, are obviously the main part of this problem here in the United States of America. And it's amazing just how dumbed down these people are. So one of the other topics that's being discussed there is UPI. So India wants to discuss the UPI. And again, that's pretty much the same thing that we see in America as FedNow. And the UPI is a unified payments interface. So it's a payment system that allows people to link up their bank accounts to their smartphone and fund transfers without having to provide this or provide that. It's just another way to get everybody to a universal one world currency. And again, UPI will also tie into universal basic income. But this is something else that they're pushing, the UPI, and they're recommending that all countries jump on board with a UPI payment system, which would have obviously removed any type of outside payment system. That means if you trade with, blockchain, or if you trade with cryptocurrency, I should say, that will be dropped. If you like to do things just through PayPal, those things will be dropped. It'll be a government-controlled currency, and of course, people will just go, "Well, what's the big deal? What's the difference? I pay online with PayPal. What's the difference if I do it through FedNow?" Well, the difference is that when the government has control over it, they will obviously wield that control, and they will freeze your bank account. And they will take money out of your account, and when the carbon footprint is put in place, you will not be able to access your money to buy things that you want to buy, such as certain foods, et cetera, because your carbon footprint will exceed its limits. So there'll be an automatic freeze on your account because the government will have full control over it. People don't realize that's what's coming with this. They just hear the stuff about the climate. They're like, oh yeah, I support that we do stuff about the climate change, because they think all this stuff is naturally occurring. They don't realize the government is doing it by design. And then, of course, when the government finally goes, hey, you know what, we got to put these things in place, which they don't think they'll ever do, even though all one has to do is go look at what they just did with the outbreak and what they have planned again in the fall. And again, that's something I'm going to be discussing heavily on the website, uprisingrevival.com. So definitely join the website if you haven't, because you can't talk about that here. But all one would have to do is look at those things and realize, wow, yeah, the government really will take total control of your life. Somehow, some way, people out there don't think that the government, the whole plan here is to have total control over you, even though that should obviously raise suspicions, but it doesn't in this stupid society, because again, they keep people divided by the left and right. They base all of these ridiculous control mechanisms they have in place off of political affiliations, which just shows you how stupid half of the society is. And the problem is that those people are stripping our rights away. So those people are becoming just as big of a problem as the government themselves is a problem, because they're enabling this. And in fact, they're trying to get in on your lives and to have, a say in what you do and how you raise your kids. That's how insane these narcissistic psychopaths are. But let's take a look at the UPI.
UPI, or Unified Payments Interface, is a revolutionary technology framework used for mobile payments in India. It was launched in 2016. You might already have heard about it, or you would even be using it for easier payments. But you would surely want to understand what UPI is and how it works. So let's dig deeper. Think of UPI as the back-end technology infrastructure on which all banks, financial institutions, and users transact money. At its core, it's a software code and a set of guidelines and protocols maintained by the National Payments Corporation of India. Over this network, banks and fintech companies have created consumer-facing applications that we use today. Think of services like Google Pay, Paytm, and PhonePe. There are at least a dozen more such apps. Banks, on their part too, offer UPI payments on their mobile applications. Now let's understand how it works. Users create a special ID called UPI ID on one of these applications. Every UPI ID is linked to the user's phone number and bank account. The sign-in flow for a merchant is identical. When transacting, a user looks up another user or merchant to send money through their mobile number or UPI ID. Once the details are in, the transaction takes place. Note here that the money travels on the backend from the sender's bank account to the payment app's current account, and then finally to the bank account of the recipient. Oh, and let me tell you, UPI transactions are free. The ease of setting up and use has been the biggest reason for the adoption of UPI. At present, 249 banks are live on UPI, enabling over 3.5 billion transactions every month. And funds transacted over UPI every month already exceed those transacted through debit and credit cards.
So that's the nightmare of the UPI. And again, it's very similar to FedNow. There's going to be a global currency. Like I always have said, to simplify this for people out there, everything is going to be one. This is what you're seeing with genders right now. People don't realize that's part of the Baphomet agenda. I call it the Baphomet agenda. It's not a known term, the Baphomet agenda. I call it the Baphomet agenda, the Barphomet agenda. Oneness, right? That's a key term in the New World Order. That's why you hear so many songs about one. They're not talking about, oh, the one that got away, my one true love. They're talking about oneness, all of us uniting as one. You ever hear that saying? Yeah. It's going to be one gender, one religion, one currency, one world government. Everything under the umbrella of one. So the universal payment interface, what they're doing around the world is they're indoctrinating all of their citizens with this type of government controlled payment system. And then obviously they'll roll in one that's when they start pushing more of the propaganda about, all the countries together as one. Oh, we need to, the Koreans and the Americans. Oh, everybody is one. Why do we have borders? Why do we have walls? Even though nobody will be able to travel anyway, which is another topic for another day about what they're doing with the transportation systems here in America. But this is what's going on. They're all meeting at BRICS. Like I said, pricks, which is what they really are. And we have our government doing absolutely nothing, right? Biden putting on his show. He's over at Lake Tahoe, falling asleep if you didn't see, meeting in Maui, sleeping while victims if they only knew their own government were the ones responsible, Biden wouldn't have been sitting in a room like that, right? Even despite all the Secret Service that he has there, even though there's probably some people in Maui who are aware, but he just goes there, shows face, and people are like, and he's sleeping, and then he goes right back to Lake Tahoe.
A community that relies on family, on ohana, whether by blood or by friendship. But like many others, my son's home burned down. My daughter's home.
Again, the show that they put on with these guys, where they're incompetent, they're buffoons, is just to make people, again, believe when America falls to its knees that it's fallen to its knees because of these incompetent fools, when all of them are working together, the left and the right, to do this. Because they're allowing things like this. They're allowing other governments to meet in the open and talk about the destruction of our dollar. Right? And it's not just talking about the dollar destruction, the value of the dollar. They're talking about all other governments and all other countries not relying on the dollar anymore, which by default would destroy the value of the dollar. So it doesn't matter who you are out there, Republican or Democrat, and you listen to this channel or however old you are. It means that your money is worth less, which means you can't buy anything, including food. Okay? They push us into a poverty system, push us into FEMA camps, push us into systems of full control where you rely on the government for food and water, all because we're all distracted by one another's preferences in the bedroom, and if men can have kids and all sorts of insane stuff, which is being done by design. It's called a psyop. Okay? People hear the term psyop, they don't even realize what it means. Psychological operation. There's a mass psychological operation being done on this entire nation. And they're getting away with it. Why are they getting away with it? Well, because we're allowing them to get away with it. And then our government sits there and goes, hey, maybe when other governments get together and they talk about the destruction of the dollar, which is what the citizens in America all use and rely on, and not only, do we use it, but other countries use it. It's like, the number one backed currency. Well, not anymore. That's what they're trying to do. But you would think that the people that we elect would be working for us to make, hey, they're plotting against Americans and America, and we're elected by these people, and we should be defending them. Oh, no, they don't care about that. They care about if 5-year-olds can have their genitals chopped off. That's what this country's caring about right now. And then they're going to be broke, and then Democrats are going to be like, oh, it was Trump or whatever, because they don't have a clue about what's going on. And the same can be said with conservatives, because they're busy infighting, like, let's boycott Bud Light and do these things back to them and cancel them. When everybody should be working together, this affects every single one of us. It affects you putting food on the table for your family, for your wife, for your children, for your mother, your father, whoever you provide for yourself. You like to eat? Do you like water? Do you like to sleep with a roof over your head? Well, these are things that will affect you then, because this is the value of the dollar. Do you notice how prices are going up? Not just at the grocery, not just at the store. Your taxes going up, your rent's going up. All these things, this is done by design. So shouldn't we be working together to make sure that they're not ripping us off and stealing from us and pushing us into poverty? Yes, we should be, but we're not. While other countries are meeting together, talking not just about destruction of the dollar, but talking about UPIs and talking about unified payment systems and universal payment systems, et cetera, et cetera. And our government does nothing and talks about nothing. They don't care. They'll just keep distracting you with nonsense. When are we going to do something about Hunter Biden's laptop? Oh, right. Like that story would actually leak if they didn't want it to leak, right? That story would really leak if they didn't want it out there. Oh, yeah, Hunter Biden's pictures of him with pipes in his mouth would really get out there. I mean, it's a total distraction. It is a total government operation here, psychologically on the masses. This is what they want. What's happening is what they want to have happen. They're doing this, they're leading, and they're hurting, and Trump is a part of it, while all these other governments are openly discussing the demise of this country. It's absolutely amazing that we're allowing this to go on. So this is BRICS, ladies and gentlemen. All these people meeting together, plotting against the United States of America. And what does our government do? Well, they just hold meetings trying to figure out what a woman is. Insanity. A reminder, if you didn't hear, I have a website, uprisingrevival.com. You can click that link on the website. Sign up for free videos. That way we can all stay in touch with one another. You can join the website. It's $2.99 a month. I highly recommend you join the site if you haven't. There's tons of information, real information there that's being shared, not just from me, from everybody else who does a great job. Everybody on the website and the forum does a great job. informing people, sharing stuff. There's no drama. Okay, it's troll free, so it's just a great way to stay educated. You could also share, obviously, information, which is what I encourage people to join the site. Share stuff going on that you see, share stuff going on in your town, help make people aware. There's so much information out there that needs to be shared, and we don't need to stay in a vacuum, and they want to keep us in one. So definitely check out the website if you haven't. A reminder as well as sub to my backup channels if you haven't yet. And I also have a Patreon for anyone out there who wants to support the channel that way. I appreciate everybody who's here. God bless all of you and your families.